Defining mental capacity is arguably the first and one of the most important things that you need to do when delving into the world of mental capacity. Why is that? Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how do you know you've found it? So in this video, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive into what mental capacity is. I'm going to have a little bit of help from Dr Seuss and friends, and hopefully at the end of it, you'll have a good, rounded understanding of what mental capacity means, so that you can use that as your foundation to take you into the next step of assessing and understanding. So most websites or YouTube videos that I've seen simply describe mental capacity as someone's ability to make a decision. And that's absolutely right. That's high level, fundamentally what it is. But actually, I think there's a lot more to it that we need to understand. I think the first thing we need to do is unpick capacity from two other concepts that it's often really closely associated with, that of mental health and vulnerability. Now, as you can see from the Venn diagram that should be up in the corner there, mental capacity, vulnerability, and mental health are three separate concepts, but they're ones that quite often overlap. But it is important to understand that you can have good mental health and not be vulnerable, but lack mental capacity. You can have poor mental health, but not lack capacity and not be vulnerable. And you can be vulnerable, but not have poor mental health and not lack mental capacity. So let me give you an example. I was once asked to assess a gentleman around his capacity to make a lasting power of attorney. Now, if you don't know what a lasting power of attorney is, it's basically a legal document that enables you to appoint people you trust to make decisions on your behalf. And in this case, the gentleman was making a lasting power of attorney for property and financial affairs. And so I sat down with him and I asked him if he could tell me what a lasting power of attorney was, and he could do all that. And I asked him who he wanted to make his attorney. And he said, I want to appoint my son. So, okay, that's fine. Can you tell me a little bit more about your son? He said, well, he's just come out of prison. I said, okay, that's interesting. What was he in prison for? For fraud. Right. And dare I ask, who did he defraud? Oh, it was me, said the gentleman. I was like, okay, right, let's just pause a moment. Let me unpick this a little bit more. Said, you understand what a lasting power of attorney is? He's like, yes, it's this legal document. So you understand the powers that you're giving to your son? Yes, he can access my, all my money. He can take all the money out. He could sell my investment, sell my house, all that sort of thing if he wanted to. I was like, okay, so help me understand then. He's just come out of prison for fraud, right? He's going to have access to all your money. He defrauded you. What do you think is going to happen? He said, oh, well, within about 5 years, he'll probably take all the money. And I said to him, okay, look, help me understand. Help me understand how, knowing all this, you're still going to appoint your son as your attorney, knowing that he's probably going to take all your money. And he said to me, look, Tim, he's my only child. He's my only son. He said, if I don't do this, I will probably never see him again. And I would rather have no money and see my son for another 5 years than have all the money in the world and never see him again. So he was a gentleman that was deliberately making himself vulnerable. But there was no evidence of a lack of capacity. There was no evidence of mental health problems. So you can see that it is possible to be vulnerable but not lack capacity, to in theory have poor mental health but not be vulnerable. You've got somebody already looking after you and not lack capacity. And likewise, you can lack capacity but not be vulnerable and not have mental health problems. So I think it's really important that we split those out. And from my point of view, whenever I'm doing an assessment, if there are issues around vulnerability or whatever it is, I always start with the mental capacity bit and say, right, is there an issue around their capacity? And if there isn't, I take that off the board. And then I'm left with these other two elements, be it mental health or be it vulnerability. And then I'll explore one of those next to see which one I think, so that I can then understand kind of the picture and the makeup of it all. Now, I'd like to introduce you next to this gentleman here. This is Horton from Horton Hears a Who with Dr Seuss. Now, I love Horton Hears a Who. In fact, if there are any parents out there that have got kids and you haven't shown them Horton Hears a Who, I'm going to tell you, stop watching this, go and grab your kid, get a copy of the video, shove it on and make them watch it. It is brilliant. It's one of my favourite films, and the reason I love it is because it's got one of my all-time favourite quotes in it. And that is, a person is a person, no matter how small. I love that because it reminds me that we have to keep the person at the centre of everything we do. Because as soon as we lose sight of the individual, we lose sight of the reason that we're doing it. And mental capacity is hugely entwined. Our decision making is hugely entwined with who we are as a person, about the experiences that have gone before us. A few years ago, I read an excellent book. It's called Algorithms to Live By, and it's about, and I'll put a link to that below. And it's about how in AI they try and map human decision making, and within that they gave an example of how just changing one factor can change the entire outcome. And actually, while you're watching this, I'm gonna kind of go through it with you. So in the book, they talk about asking, kind of a raft of people, 10,000 plus, I think, a simple question. And that question was, tonight you can do one of two things, right? You can either have dinner with a family member, or you can meet your favourite celebrity, author, whatever, and become lifelong best mates. Okay, so that's the decision that you've got to make now. Okay, do you have dinner with a family member, or do you meet your lifetime hero, favourite celebrity, author, whatever? Now, I don't want to influence you in any way. I will say YouTubers, rock stars, we're all cool. But it's up to you, right? If you want to have dinner with a family member, fine. So honestly, right, family member or favourite celebrity. Now, we change it slightly and we say you're going to die tomorrow. Now, how does that change it? Now, I'm hoping that all of you go, I'll meet up with a family member. If you don't, get in touch. Family therapy will sort it out. Not bother. But you can see, and what they found actually when they did the study was that the older a person was, the more likely they were to say that they wanted to have dinner with a family member, because their perception of what the term lifelong meant was very different to that of a 26-year-old, that of a 15-year-old. And so you can see how just by changing one factor, we start to change the way the decision is made and potentially the outcome. And so it is very easy for us to say, look, mental capacity is just decision making. And at a high level, that is correct. But actually, it's important when we're thinking about that as a definition that we start to think about what goes on underneath. Let me give you another example about how experiences change things. So my best mate, when he was about 17, he was made homeless. And I still remember talking to him, after the event, and he would talk about how he only had like 50 pence left. And now he is incredibly kind of cautious with money, right? So you give me £5,000, I'm off snowboarding, I'm going to watch Spurs, that's it, gone. If you give it to my best mate, it's incredibly well looked after, right? It's ring fence, it's looked after. And that is because he went through that experience of not having any money. So his experience means his decisions and the way he acts are very different to my experience. So I've been lucky enough never to be homeless. So whilst it's very easy to say that mental capacity is just another way of saying decision making, actually there's more to it than that. And there's more that you need to understand about just that definition. And that is, what are the experience of the person that have gone before to put them there? And what factors may influence that within it? Now, in my upcoming videos, I'm going to talk about how we build on that definition to start actually assessing it. And we're going to start breaking down the Mental Capacity Act, and we're going to start looking at a lot of the different nuances in between. If you've liked today's video, if you want to hear more, then please do subscribe and like below. If there's anything that you want to learn about mental capacity, about the way we assess it, about maybe what different definitions mean or anything like that, please do put some comments in below. I'll happily make a video and give you that information. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.